And welcome back to another episode of Life Changing Challengers. I have with me the one, the only, Elizabeth Snyder from Elizabeth Snyder Photography. She is an amazing photographer, ladies and gentlemen. And when I give you her website and her Instagram at the end of the episode, you're just going to jump right on because some of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen. And you're going to just want to hire her. You might have to fly out to New York to do it, but you will want to hire her, I promise you. But she's got a great story for us today, so let's welcome her. Elizabeth, how you doing?
Hi, Brad. Thank you so much for having me. Doing great. How are you?
I'm great, and the honor is all mine, I assure you. So, Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where you grew up, what was the complement of your family, and what was it like to be Elizabeth as a kid?
All right. Well, we're gonna go deep.
It's deep.
Let's go deep. So I always kind of start my story off when I was about 8 years old. I did not have the happiest or healthiest upbringing. It was, my brothers and I were the product of teenage pregnancy and marriage. And so
Mm.
we did have family that cared about us, took us out, got us out of our parents' hair, vice versa. When I was 8, I had an aunt who was like 8 years older than me. So she was 16. Her grandfather, it was a really hot summer that year. Let me preface with that. We were on our parents' nerves and it was not a great day. My aunt picked me up, took me to my grandparents' house where her grandfather had just given her everything that she needed to start a darkroom and modest portrait studio in her attic. And that's what we did. And it kind of started the whole thing. Once I was up there with her, figuring out how to put everything together, and then, of course, testing everything out once we got it, learning how to develop a film and a picture right there. Watching an image appear on a piece of paper where there was nothing before, it was like alchemy. It was like real witchcraft. And I was hooked. It was what I knew at that age that I was supposed to be doing with my life. And luckily I hung on to that. So yeah, from 8 years old, let's see. I did grow up in a small town called North Tonawanda. It did get some notoriety from David Letterman in the 90s, actually, calling it most racist city in America. Yep. We had that. And actually, it's changed a lot now, which is very nice to see people of color living there and not having a hard time at all. But I've heard some stories about the 50s, 60s, 70s that just were not great. So yeah, I grew up there.
And that's upstate New York?
So we did our best. My
Yeah.
parents did finally get divorced when I was a senior in high school. But leading up to then, it was pretty tumultuous in our house. There's a lot of anger. There's also resentment. There's a lot of just all kinds of stuff. So my brothers and I did our best, and my mom did her best. And, it is what it is. Growing up, knowing that I really, really wanted to be an artist and specifically a photographer, I exhausted every art class that I could take in high school and in middle school and just went for it. And by the time I got to high school, after exhausting every photography class that I was allowed to take, I went to BOCES, which is our trade school. I wasn't a great student, very average, very dyslexic, very ADHD. Nobody was really diagnosing back then. We did what we could, and it was difficult. So I went to trade school and I went into cosmetology because I really wanted to know how to do hair and makeup on photo shoots. And that was what ended up sticking, because when I graduated high school, I ended up in a situation where I had nowhere to live. All of a sudden, I did hair because it was the way that my then boyfriend at the time and I could afford to move out, and photography was not we didn't have social media then. Yeah. So it was very difficult to kind of get started. And he was going to school, so I couldn't afford to go to school. So we were just kind of I was working 2 jobs. He was going to school and working. We ended up getting married very, very young and having kids very, very young, and then divorced. And that was where it kind of my life took a turn. You kind of think you have it all together, and then you're all of a sudden you're an adult and you have two kids and, a partner who's not necessarily growing with you. So it just kind of melted. But after
What
being
did you?
single, mhm.
Yeah, let me just ask you first. Let's just pull back just a minute because I want to get some. I want to get some details in here. I want people to understand what you're going through. So, all right. So you go to high school and you do every possible thing to get as much knowledge as you can in photography, but then you move over to cosmetology, which I think is very smart because it does two things for you. One, hair and makeup for your photo shoots. Two, gives you a trade and you walk out of high school with a trade.
Yep,
Super smart.
for free.
And sounds like you were self-actualized enough to know that you weren't a great student as far as academics go. And I was with you there. I'm with you there. I'll give you a coordinating story just so you know. When I was in high school, I was in band and orchestra, but I really wanted to be in theater
Mm.
and I want to be in musical theater. So I didn't start ballet, tap, and jazz till my freshman year of high school. So I could dance, so I could be in musical theater. That
That's
never
awesome.
developed, unfortunately. I mean, it did sort of, kind of, but not as a profession. But I was the same way, right? So you wanted to be a photographer, but you knew that you needed to do hair and makeup to get good shots, and also provided you a way to have a trade. So, all right, we get to the point where you get married. You get married young, have two kids,
Yep.
guy
Yeah.
and a girl.
Yep. Yeah. Boy, then girl. Now they, them. Now gender neutral. But yeah, the stereotypical boy first, then a girl, then we're done, then we're,
How far apart in age are they?
they're 3.5 years.
Okay.
So yeah, my oldest is just turned 21 in September, and my youngest is going to be 18 next week.
Wow.
I am.
Uh, yeah, I can imagine. So is your oldest going in, is she in college?
They are figuring themselves out, doing some soul searching, and yeah, they'll get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, there is no better time to not go to college than right now. There are
Right.
so many opportunities for you to build wealth and make money, learn trades, learn skills, and not have to go to college
Yeah.
and not
No, for
get that
sure.
far in debt and stuff. There's so many opportunities.
Yes, and,
Great.
and they know they can live at home forever, so it's not like they have to like get out, get a job right now. Everything's expensive. We know that.
All right. So let's dig into the point where you are a single mom with two kids.
Yeah. So I had an empty bank account because my ex moved out and emptied the bank account, and no car. He had totaled his car, and then the other car, like, he was working full time, so he needed the car. I did not have one. So anything that I had to do, I had to beg, borrow, and steal and walk, which was fine. But it did put me in a position of where I just did not want it to seem normal to my kids that this was how we were living. I got really, really good at being broke and juggling bills, and the electricity's not getting shut off till this month, so we're paying the gas today, kind of deal. And it was tough. But like, the one deciding memory that really stands out is in Buffalo, it snows a lot. I don't know if you heard, but we get feet, not inches. And people don't typically like to shovel their sidewalks. And it makes it very difficult and I go on a whole soapbox about this, but it makes it very difficult for people who don't have a car or do have to walk or get the bus or whatever to have a safe space to do that. And there was a period where I was waiting to get my approval for food stamps, and my application got lost in a whole medical leave situation. And I had no money. I had no job. I had no money. And I couldn't figure out how to feed the kids, but I did find a food bank about a mile up the road. So in the sled with the kids, because I couldn't push a stroller in the snow, dragging them to the food bank in below 20 because we just couldn't wait anymore. And that was my big turning point of, this is not okay. We are never
Yeah,
doing
right.
marathon things are going to turn around. And actually, the next day, the food stamp people called me back to get my application rolling finally. So yeah, it was really difficult, but got a job, got a car, got kids, sorted out, moved into an apartment, and really kind of lost everything because I was working 3 jobs at that point, and I just had no time for anything, especially art, and especially what made me most happy. Not just taking care of the kids and doing everything for them. I wasn't doing anything for me. Um, and eventually I got it.
What were you said you had 3 you had 3.
So I was doing hair still, on the side, and occasionally for a salon, I was doing updos for like weddings and stuff, like just kind of freelance. I was working at a bank and I was working at Wegmans, all kind of at the same. Wegmans is a grocery store. I was a
Oh, love Wegmans.
Yeah.
No, you don't tell me. Love Wegmans. I lived in
Yeah,
DC for a while.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
that's
Wegmans.
best. Oh, they're the best place to work too. They really are.
Really?
Yeah, they're very, very good to their employees. But yeah, so I, kind of gave up on everything because I didn't have time to even think about it. And I was finally working at the bank full time, and, I had dropped down to 2 jobs, and I was doing business banking collections, and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. I was foreclosing on people's homes and dreams, and a lot of people tie their homes to their businesses. So when they fail, you lose your house too. It was just soul sucking. It was just awful. And I became pretty bitter, pretty miserable. Didn't take very long for that to happen, and got pulled aside by a friend of mine who was just like, all right, listen, if age, money, circumstance, like nothing matters. Like, what would you be doing? My knee-jerk reaction went right back to photography, and I almost forgot about it. Like, I was almost like, oh, right. Yeah. No, I was going to be a photographer. He sent me a link to a contest that I ended up winning. So I got a camera. Back then it was Photoshop. You had to buy the discs. I got the program, I got a camera, and I got a laptop. And within a year, I was able to quit my job at the bank and do photography full time.
So you're doing photography full time. Were you doing like what you're doing now?
Yeah, not so much in the studio because I didn't have one, but I did a lot of outdoor, like family shoots, and a lot of weddings, a lot.
That's where I was going with it. Okay.
Finally retired from those, but
Oh my God. So yes, I will give you a quick little. I'll give you a little quick anecdote. You were 8. I was 15, and my best friend had her father used to do photography as a hobby, and they were digging around, cleaning out the garage, and they found her imager. What's that thing called?
yeah.
The imager, because we don't know, we digital now.
No.
And yeah, so I got to experience that, and that's when I got more into like the film photography and stuff as well. But that was the same thing. I thought when you were mentioning it when you were 8, how you came something out of nothing, I was like, that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, we spent hours in the dark room, hours. It's like I would go to her house at like 8:39 in the morning, and about like 6 p.m. her mom would call us out of there, because we had just like rolls and rolls of film just drying, and and of course, we're kids, so we didn't pay for the paper or the chemicals or the for anything, or the film. We didn't pay for anything. There's like, hey, we're not made of money here. If you're gonna go buy more paper, Ilford, Ilford paper and Ilford film, you're gonna have to go buy it.
It gets expensive pretty quick.
Yeah, and when I got to college, I was looking for a part-time, and I just needed like books and gas and stuff. And I came across this guy. His business was called Mr. Photo. And basically what he did was he was hired by the Greek community to go whenever they had a formal or an event, and they had a lot of parties, exchanges is what we call them, when you'd have a fraternity and a sorority, and they would have
sure.
Yeah, they have some sort of event together, and it was very casual and stuff. They'd be like, oh, call Mr. Photo. And we would go in there and we'd just take pictures all night. They'd feed us, they'd, water us, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was a great gig. And then then it's still doing film, but we'd send out the film. They'd come back, and then we would put them in albums, label them, and say, okay, here, and then give them a sheet and say, order what you want. And then we would pick them up, and that's how we would make money. They'd pay us for the shoot, and then they'd pay us for the photos. So you wanted great photos,
Right.
but I remember that, and from there I moved into weddings during the summer.
Yep.
And I did a friend of my dad's, and so he was at the wedding while I was doing it. And he was like, man, you moved them around like nothing. Because you know what I used to do for them? It's like when I'd get the wedding party afterwards, it was like, all right, it would be like the bridesmaids, the bride, the bridesmaids, the bride, and the groom, right? Then the groom, everybody, and then move off the girls, and then have the groom and the wedding and the bride and the groom. Then move the bride off, and then it was the groom and the groomsmen. That's it. I just would move them through like a freaking conveyor belt. My damn shit.
For wedding,
It was like efficient. It was like, that's really efficient the way you did it. Then start taking candidates the rest of the night. You know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was sound.
It's the DJ show. You're just there. It's nice.
Yeah. Now it's like you go to a wedding and they would snap the shots, and like 5 seconds later it would be on a monitor. They would have the bounce, right? And it would just go click, click, click. And then all of a sudden the monitor would have the pictures right there.
Yeah, there are a lot of photographers that'll shoot tethered. I just never was interested in doing that. It just seemed like a lot of overhead, and I was already like doing 16-hour days and whatever. So no, that's a lot. I do know plenty of people that do that now, and it's nuts to me.
Yeah, and then they tag on the video combo with the sliding and the whole bit where they would throw it in together, which I do a lot of my own editing, and I know how much work that is. So I'm like, wow, no wonder what it costs for you to have a freaking wedding done.
Crazy. It is insane. In fact, I've gotten 2 calls now from brides that have had other photographers asking about what my editing rates are. Because I guess, well, at least for these 2, the photographer did give me permission to work on the images. Like I always ask, and I always reach out and make sure that I am like doing things accordingly. But yeah, so they spent, my God, the one girl spent like $7,000 just on her photographer. The other one 5. And I'm like, I've never been paid $5,000 for a wedding. I don't know what else went wrong. Yeah. And and then to re-edit all of the images, I'm like, all right, well, they're giving me the raws, so I can do it. But yeah, it's insane. And I'm kind of really glad that I'm not doing it anymore. It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and I did it over college. That was extra money. You know what I mean? And yeah, well, back then, I'm not even gonna tell you what year it was, but back then I was like stoked to get $500, which included me doing all the editing, giving them the proofs, and then handing them an album and whatever other ones they want. So whatever I got from the pictures, which was cents, you know what I mean? You get a quarter, 50 cents or something per print by the time you took everything out of it. If I was able to make $500, I was ecstatic. I was like, this is a huge one. It's $500. Now they're getting 7,000.
Yeah. It's nuts. I don't know how anybody's even getting married anymore. Like those micro weddings that were over COVID were fantastic. And I loved shooting every single one of those. But now that everybody's getting back into the big weddings again, I'm just out. I can handle like 100 people and then I'm good. Now it's insane. Yeah, God bless wedding photographers. I'm not that anymore.
Well, and especially now it's smartphones, which have such great freaking photos on them now. You know what I mean? That it was like, I went to one and they were just like, here's an upload site. And they're like, find your best ones, upload them, put copies up on their site. And I was like, that's smart.
Yeah.
They had a professional come in and do the ceremony. And then they stopped at that point, and he just told everybody, here's the site, take all the pictures you want, and your best ones, upload them. Right. We're going to use those. So you are all our photographers.
That's fantastic. Well, and back in the day, people would put disposables on the camera or on the tails, and everybody would take disposables, which always ended up being the most fun pictures to look at anyway, because everything else is just posed and stiff, and, it's a wedding. It's a wedding photos, But yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of letting people do the cell phone thing. I know it's kind of a touchy subject with some photographers, but the cameras on our phones are so much more powerful than anything I ever started with. And with the filters and the portrait studio or whatever that iPhone has now, I, it's like, you know what? If you can get a great shot, do it. Great. Fantastic. I'm not afraid that my job is going to be gone. I'm not afraid of AI. I'm not afraid of, you see the ads all the time for the headshot AI, whatever. Like, you don't need a photographer. It's not there yet. And you're always going to want somebody to kind of coach you through, do it the cheap way, and then come to somebody. I think pay somebody who knows what they're doing.
I don't think AI allows you to bring any individuality out of it. You know what I mean? Like, when you have a good photographer like yourself, you could almost see the personality come out of that, come out of your subject.
Yeah.
AI, it might be the picture, the face is there, even the structure is there, but then all of a sudden everything else doesn't make sense. So it's very cold. And that's what I'm thinking about AI. Is it cool? Yeah, it's cool, but it's not something that you're gonna put on canvas and put above your fireplace.
Yeah.
No.
Not at this point.
Right. But you will
Yeah.
if you have a wedding and you've got a great photographer like yourself and you've got this wonderful flowing dress and the tux and they're looking at each other and the sunset behind them and you got it all set up and you're like, yeah, but you get their personalities. So you started doing weddings. And were you, so was this at the point when you won the photography contest? Were we in digital age yet?
Yes.
Yes.
It just started. So I had to relearn a lot of things, especially ISO, because that was always the film. That was, and I'm like, what is this even, So we would, choose our film according to what the lighting was going to be. And now all of a sudden we can just do it. What was nice about Adobe anyway is that they kept all of the names of all of the darkroom tools the same. So there's still Dodgifer and there's still, enlarging and whatever, healing brush, all of that. And, for people who get on Photoshop and get on, the models were a big thing, right? Like Victoria's Secret was notorious for photoshopping the crap out of all of them and not being realistic. But people have been doing that since the beginning of photography. Like when photography first started, even the Darregard, or I never say it right, the French guy that invented photography, even he was doing experimental things with the developing like post. So like people were making all of these like weird superimposed ghost pictures and like it kind of started the spiritual movement. And they did stuff with, what was her name? Not Greta Garbo, one of the old silver screen actresses. She was pregnant at the time. So she's facing away from the camera and she's looking over her shoulder and she's got like this really cute like black bathing suit on. And it was like the epitome of pinup because it was World War II and it was, right when all that was going on. And she was pregnant and they tucked her in, and for the actresses with like, the Hollywood light, like right in their face and they're looking up and they have all the, all of that was done with like Vaseline and blurring and erasing and, no, they were not poreless. They had pores, I promise. So, the hard time that people give Photoshop, it's not really fair. It's up to the photographer, it's up to the editor, and it's up to whoever's publishing the pictures to make sure that they're being realistic and true to their brand and whatever they are trying to do. I'm really glad that things are changing and becoming super more realistic. Like when people, women especially, because I do specialize in women, we get very touchy about our weight and you can be the most gorgeous person in the world and you're still going to hate something about yourself. I make sure that people understand that at the end of the day, it needs to look like you. Like, we want you to not look plastic. We want you to look like yourself on a really good day. And yes, we can tweak it, but let's be true. And honestly, of course, there are people that do want you to go overboard and go plastic and go super filtered, which at the end of the day, it's their picture. Like I gotta make them happy, but it doesn't happen that often. And I think that it's because of all the coaching and all of the things that I'm doing with my clients beforehand to prepare them for what their images are going to look like in the end. We go through personality. We go through, if it's a headshot, what are you doing? Like, what do you own a business? Are you looking for a promotion? Did you just get a new job? Like, why are you here? What are you doing? How did you get to where you are? I love hearing about people's journeys and how they got to where they are, right? And you do too, apparently. and and how they got to where they are from where they were. And if you're, business collections person, you know, you didn't grow up thinking that that was what you were going to do. So how did you get there, and why are you there, and do you enjoy it or do you not? And why aren't you doing something else? So like all of these questions and these things that I do to kind of get to know somebody before they even come into the studio are very, very important for the shoot in general, just because it gets them warmed up. It gets them to know me better. It gets me to know them better. And then we aren't like perfect strangers just on that day. And we're constantly coaching and we're constantly shouting out instructions, and my assistant's there to like distract basically, because they're not seeing me when they look into the camera. They're seeing themselves. And people, men too, are scared to death sometimes when a camera's in their face and they're like, oh my God, what do I do? And oh my God, everybody's looking at me and who do I think I am? And, that whole imposter syndrome thing just starts. And if you can keep them busy enough and you keep them thinking about other things, I'm very, very into the micro adjustments in the studio. Tilt your head, fix your get your Disney princess finger, make sure your hand posture is right. So there's all kinds of stuff that we're doing with them that they aren't even really thinking about once we get started. So expression, a real laugh, it just kind of depends on the shoot, depends on what they're doing it for. But it's a huge piece to what I do. And it's because it's people, and it's not something that AI is ever going to be able to do, which is another reason I'm not really afraid of it taking my job.
Yeah. No, I don't. Like I said, we had mentioned this before. I don't think AI is going to be able to do it just because it's still cold. It's really cold,
Yeah.
and I've seen more AI pictures than I even want to ever to know.
You always know.
Yeah,
Always know when it is.
you always know whether. Yeah, you just look. There's one guy that does half and half. He does this. His whole channel on Instagram it's like half and half. So what he's talking about is up here, and then it's just a talking head. Talking head's AI,
Oh,
and you could tell
that those aren't real.
Yeah, and it's because also the mouth is moving differently.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of weird. What he says is interesting, but it's
Mhm.
still kind of weird. And now you listen, and you can, if you've been really listening, all the voices,
Yeah.
And I found them on 11 Labs. I was like, I think one of them, the guy that everywhere is Brian. You'll know Brian the minute that it starts to talk. And it's that he's got that like medium with a little bit of timbre in the back of her voice. And he's always got this like the motivational stuff when you know what he sounds like. And you just know, you know what I mean? Any kind of motivational stuff, you'll hear it. And he's on there. And it's like, it's Brian. And I'm like, oh, okay. But and then if you start listening, you'll learn other ones. And then
Yes.
and Brian is by far the one why they use it is because he's the most natural sounding of all the AI regular voices. And then they got it now where you can actually like clone your own voice. So you don't have to talk anymore.
Funny story. I actually did end up doing that. I just self-published a book last month, and I am very, very dyslexic and not a strong reader, especially out loud. I was recording in the closet. I was doing all kinds of stuff to get the distractions out. Let me just concentrate on what I'm trying to say. I ended up voice cloning because I wanted it to be in my voice, and you can tweak it. So you can re-record and fix a part that isn't. I actually did use 11 Labs to do it. It was the best way for me to move forward with the project because it just was not happening. Yeah. So I did end up doing that. And, I kind of feel like if you do find something that works for you and you weren't going to pay a person anyway to do it, go for it. I don't want it to take people's jobs. That's the only thing that I'm like kind of about, because it does kind of steal. Its whole thing is that it's taking pieces of the internet and putting it together into whatever it is, like generative AI is what you're telling it to do, but it can't just start from scratch. It needs to collect those things from somewhere. And I don't know if you use the new generative AI stuff in Photoshop at all, but that's exactly what it's doing is it's scouring the internet and stealing pieces to make it work for whatever you're trying to tell it to do. Because it does feel like stealing. It doesn't feel honest.
Yeah. There's this, and now it makes things copywritten harder to copyright because of that. It used to be that if you wanted to use stuff for your website or if you wanted to put stuff online, if you grabbed it from Google, if
Mhm.
you didn't get permission or be specific about making the credit,
Yep.
it could be taken down. You could be sued, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh,
now,
yeah.
because of AI and because of just that, now you can't even get a copyright anymore.
It's,
The only way to copyright something is it's got to be like the whole image.
yep.
You got to copyright the whole image. You got to copyright the whole book complete, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that, and people will take paragraphs or they'll take a whole chapter and put it in different words,
Mhm.
and now they copyright it.
Right.
But there's no recourse. There's no
Right.
recourse.
No, not yet. I'm sure the laws are coming, but yeah, right now it's looking, especially for copywriters, because that was kind of the first thing with like Chat GPT and all of that. Like that was kind of how it started was, hey, I need to write this essay for this class I have, and I don't want to. So tell me what I need to say. And it just kind of evolved from there. So I'm hoping it changes. I'm sure it will. I'm sure they're going to come up with protections for artists. So we just need to get people to value artists a little more because everybody's always looking to do everything for free, and that's not how we pay our bills.
So tell me about this book. I know you've got a master class that I was going to plug that you put out there called Passion, Purpose, and Power. Is that also the name?
Ew. The book is called Finding Your Purpose Beyond Trauma. And it details a lot of case studies because, like I said, I talked to all my clients and they allowed me to put some of their stories into the book to highlight the importance of making sure that you are making time for you no matter what is going on in your life and also turning your traumas into your strengths instead of it being your story and your victimhood kind of whole deal. You can turn it around and use the strength that you got from that experience as your superpower and kind of it becomes a story and not your story, which is very near and dear for me.
That's fantastic. I actually have been thinking about doing the same thing, but not about, I like your route is to go with, basically making sure you have time for you and that you make sure that you know yourself. For me, it's about those little nuggets of information on how did they succeed beyond trauma and turning their traumas, like most of this podcast is turning those traumas on their head and doing something unorthodox to come out of it and be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
know, you knew what you wanted to do and you had to go away from it to come back to it to become the success you are. That's
Yeah,
unorthodox. Most people would either drive straight through, they would keep doing something, but you actually went away from it completely.
I did. I even went as far as selling my equipment because I needed to pay bills. So I didn't have anything for a long time. And we didn't have cameras on our phones yet either. So
Right.
I was just, if somebody had their camera out, great. But otherwise, there are very few pictures of even my kids from back then, which makes me very sad. But,
Mm.
you know, it is what it is. But yeah, it's, trauma is such a, everybody has it, it's so common. And once you start getting into those games of, oh, mine's worse, oh, mine's worse, there's somebody who is always going to have more or worse than you. So getting away from the comparison because your trauma is your trauma, whatever happened and whatever it was and whoever did it, it mattered to you. So it doesn't matter if it's as extreme as somebody else's. And that is a big reason, especially women, like we tend to poo poo everything. Like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Like, look, this person has it so much worse. I'm totally fine. But you're not always totally fine. And you do sometimes need some help to get through it. And it's very easy for us to just be, not want to bother somebody or not want to burden others with our issues, but we sometimes need to. And your friends and your family, if they're good friends and family, they want to help and they want to be there too. So the book was just it was a love letter to my childhood. It was the,
Oh,
all right, it's okay. It's all right. We got it. We're adults now,
yes.
and kind of showing where I came from and where I am now, and the same with other people, and just kind of adding in, this is why it's important to have art of any form into your life, like any kind of creativity. And it doesn't matter if it's painting or cooking or reading or doing something that you just enjoy, like hiking. Like hiking is a way to be creative too. Like it doesn't have to be your job. It doesn't have to make you money to make you happy. And if you're incorporating something like that into your life every single day, you're going to be a much, much happier and healthier person. I survived cancer twice. I wholeheartedly blame the fact that I was as stressed out and as just not taking care of myself, putting everybody ahead of myself. I truly believe that that's why I got sick. Unfortunately, it happened. I'm here. I'm great. It's fine. But I think that that is a big reason we're seeing a lot of health epidemics in our country right now, too. I mean, not to mention the lack of health insurance and everything else that people don't have right now, but also that we're stressed out. We're overworked. We're overstressed. We have commercials yelling at us every 2 seconds about what we need to be or do, whatever worthy of whatever it is they're trying to make us feel unworthy of. Watch the Kardashians. Here are these super rich people that you will never ever be neighbors with, but this is what you should be striving for, and that's not fair. It just isn't, and it just stresses people out. And we're in this capitalist kind of society where, I mean, the dollar does rule. So, and we have bills to pay and we have things that we need, but we don't also need, Louis Vuitton bags.
I agree.
Make me happy.
I want to talk about those two bouts, but I want to ask you first just a couple little like trivia questions. One is that I'm what I'm getting from you, and I'm starting to see it, but I'm not sure. Are you on either the cusp or are you Generation X?
Cusp. Yeah, I was born in 80.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right at the end of
Yeah.
Generation X. It explains your work ethic and the way that you said, "Oh, we have all we're always working. We're doing this stuff." No, I was going to say, if you're not Generation X, after that, they don't know what work ethic is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Millennials work pretty hard. Like we had it kind of rough. Like we had like 3 different stock dumps. We had to survive a lot of stuff, and then the housing market crash, and then there was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of went into our demise.
Yeah, well,
Like,
we went
yeah, I mean,
1990, and we had 1999, and then 2008, right?
mhm,
So 2008, the millennials are in the workforce, so they're getting that. But you know, what I see as far as Generation X goes, and the baby boomers were like, it happens, okay, let's dig ourselves out.
right.
The very next day, we got our hands dirty. I feel like millennials and Gen Z want to cry about it, want to blame everybody but themselves. They'll finally get to work and they'll figure it out, but
Mhm.
the opportunities are so much more than what we had. You know what I mean? I worked at McDonald's. I worked at Jamaica Ends Meat. I worked at Olive Garden. I worked at the movie theater. Every little thing just to get a buck. And I was privileged because my parents knew work ethic and they wanted the best for me. They wanted me to do better than they did, which is what we want for our kids, right? We always want our
Right.
kids to do better than we did. And they were adamant about it, and they set me up for success. That's how I was privileged. I didn't grow up with money. I was
Right.
lower middle class as a kid. And then when I got to school, I had to pay my own way, do everything like that. So
Mhm.
the privilege that I had, which you want to call it as far as privilege goes, is that my parents wanted it for me.
Right.
That's the privilege I had. I
Right.
didn't,
And that's
it
a
was
huge thing. If you have supportive parents in your early years and your developing years, like that is a huge deal, because there are a ton of people that don't, and
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know how to even be an adult. I was out at 18, like I had to figure it out, and I did, thank God, but I could have easily been a disaster. Things are just so different.
Oh,
And I don't know if it's necessarily for me anyway, from what I've experienced with my kids' friends and with them and things like that. Like they're definitely Gen Z, but they're also very kind people and very caring. And well, at least the kids that I'm exposed to, very strong feelings about things. And I'm hoping that means that they're going to change things because I'm too old. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the world looks like in another 20 years because I truly think that this is the generation that is like sick of it. It's just, we don't want to pay $10 for a hamburger. We are done with this. We're going to go vegan. We're going to, or whatever it is. So it's, yeah, I think we're on an upward trajectory. And I think that I have hope. I have hope that things are going to get easier and cheaper. And you're not going to have to take out 2 mortgages to make ends meet. So yeah, I guess we'll just.
I agree. We are on the soup. That I have a hat that I love, and it basically the future is looking brighter. And I wear that all the time to remind people that I think that's the direction that we're going. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think with the people the people that are now becoming into the workforce, because let me tell you something. I make my money through IT. I'm a project program manager for IT. I do kind of freelance whenever there's a project. Someone gives me a project. I run a team, and then we get whatever they want done. But I was working Chase Bank, and I was a contractor, so I didn't have a lot of leeway. They did decide to hire me full time just so I can take care of HR. And I had somebody that decided not to come in one day. Just didn't show up. Just didn't show up. Now, in my time, if you didn't show up, you didn't call, you didn't even try to make an excuse. No. You walk in the next day and you basically handed your keys and your apron or whatever you had, and that was it. And you walked in and I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to work." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're fired." And he goes, and of course, I had just become, this manager thing, just taken over. And they only wanted me there so I can do the HR stuff because I didn't have anybody else to do it. And I'm like, "Oh, no. I'm your manager now. You are done. Bye. Pick up your stuff and get the heck out." And he goes, "No, we have these things called unexcused absences." I'm like, "Huh?" So sure enough, I called HR. HR goes, "Yeah, they get 3 of those a year."
Oh my God. Where you just don't call?
Yeah. The whole thing is that I didn't really care that he was out that day.
Right.
I had told the whole team this over and over again. I'm like, "You need to take the day off. You tell your manager, or you tell me, you send an email, you say, I am not going to be in today." That's it. I don't need to know anything else. If you want to tell me just so we can be on the same page, you want to say, "Hey, listen, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to be out." Fine. But I don't care. I just want to know that you're not on your way here and you didn't get into an accident on the way here. You didn't get kidnapped or anything. I'm like, that's it. There's no other way about it. Just call in, say that you're taking a day. We'll take it off your PTO and we'll go from there. Not a big deal. We called, we tried, blah, blah, blah. We knew that he was going to voicemail and sending us to voicemail and the whole bit. We knew all that. And yet he didn't even want to pick up the phone. And I'm like, but yet
That's right.
HR says, nope, he gets 3 of those.
That's unbelievable. I know it's harder and harder for companies. Well, they don't want to fire people. They want to lay you off, or not lay you off. They don't want it to be their decision. They want you to quit. Right. Because at least in New York State, they have this workers stuff that they have to pay out anyway. Mm-hmm. So employers are like, it's better if they just quit. So they let them get away with the temp stuff before they.
It's good.
Okay, good. So yeah, I haven't heard of that one. That's new for me.
Oh, that was 2008.
Yeah,
it's only gotten worse.
That's insane to me. I can't imagine not even calling. I definitely not call in, but that's calling.
Yes, as a Gen Xer, we know there is no way in heck that I was going to do that. Listen, I'll tell you one just recently.
Yeah.
I speak at podcast conventions, and I had met somebody, and it just became friendly, and so I spent some time and we chatted and everything else. And she was working at this group home or something. And she goes, and all of a sudden, she's complained that she doesn't have any money. And yet she's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to work today." I'm like, "You're not going to work today?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be working with this person. I don't want to work with them. So I'm not going to go to work today." "You're just not going to go to work." I'm like, "Okay, you just told me you're without money. I mean, that's just life. It's an adult, you go to work, make your money, And she's on hourly. It wasn't like she was on salary.
Right.
She just picked another day. I'm like, no. You're like, and boy, when she got, I'm like, you are one entitled freaking Gen Zer. And she got so ticked at me.
I bet.
And I was like, think about it. Think about it. You're sitting here, on one hand, you're telling me you're broke. And on the other hand, you're telling me you're not going to go to work, which is your income. Yeah. And I'm like,
That's special.
Yeah.
That's
And I'm like, so, and that's, I've heard that from a bunch of people. So it was just like, no, I don't feel like going to work. Okay.
Oh.
Blah, blah. So anyway, I want to step back real quick. You're a 2-time cancer survivor.
Yeah.
So we went through your story and we didn't get to that part.
It's a blip. So yeah, my first, it wasn't full-blown cancer. It was like, so, I guess, well, kids now, they get HPV vaccines. And so the reason they're doing that is because it causes esophagus and some other kind of cancer, and then ovarian. Yeah. So it's got like connotations for both boys, well, men and women. So we didn't have that. And I ended up with pre-cervical cancer. So I had to be treated for that. I was like 27, maybe 28. I wasn't very old. And then when I was 35, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And that was a whole nother deal. If you're going to get cancer, thyroid is probably the easiest that you can have because they just take it out and give you radiation and then you're good. But that's if you find the right doctor to catch it in time. And if you find the right surgeon who isn't going to argue about what it is that you need. So they do something when they test for that called a fine needle aspiration. And it's exactly what it sounds. They just take a sample from your neck to check to see if it was cancer. And they can only do it like 3 times. And so I went to have it done, and whoever they had doing it was new. And so all 3 times that she did it, it came out inconclusive. And so when I was talking to the surgeon, he is like, all right, well, we could just take the part that is enlarged because it's just going to get bigger and you're going to end up suffocating eventually. We just needed to get that part out. And if it isn't cancerous, then you have that other part of your thyroid and we can work with that. But I knew, like, you know how you just know sometimes? Like, I knew. And I did not want another surgery. And I'm like, you know what? We just need to take the whole thing. Argue with him. But he finally did it. And it turns out there are 3 different kinds of cancers that you can get in your thyroid. I had 2 of them. Yeah. So they took the thyroid. I got treated with radiation. It was not chemo. It was very easy. It was not a big deal at all. Thank God. But yeah, I don't want to repeat. So I've been making a point of taking care of me first and then taking care of everybody else. So it's been a hard shift because I never, like, I took care of my brothers and then I took care of my husband and then I took care of my kids and now I'm taking care of everybody. But it was something my husband and I had talked about, and he values me being around too. So we both had conversations around, well, make sure you're doing this and make sure you're doing that. Did you get on the treadmill today? And it's not about losing weight. It's about just staying healthy. Yeah. So, and I know that that's where he's coming from. So I'm not like angry when he says that. Yeah. But yeah, it just, I truly blame the amount of stress and the lack of self-care for getting sick. And I truly believe that is why a lot of people are getting sick, is because they don't have time or inclination, or maybe they don't know better, or whatever it is that they need to take care of themselves, because everything is mental and it just kind of goes down into the physical, and it will.
Absolutely. And I've got several other episodes on here to prove your case study without a doubt, but that's amazing. So they took it out, you did radiation, and now I'm imagining, I think so, you're going to tell me right now, but you and like every single woman in both sides of my family are on Synthroid.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Levothyroxine.
Yep. Every single one on both sides of my family, my dad's side and my mom's side, they're all on Synthroid. Yep. So I'm waiting for the doctor to tell me.
What area are you in?
So right now I live in Tampa.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Midwest. So kind of like Buffalo. Yeah. So we actually are the thyroid cancer capital of the world the last time I checked.
What's in the buffalo sauce?
No, it's what's in the water. No, for real. We had so many chemicals, and I don't know if you,
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but we had this big disaster on Love Canal that happened in the
Yeah.
70s, and it was all of that OxyChem garbage that they dumped into the ground. And not far from here, we have a town where they are keeping Manhattan Project waste as well.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
in the soil. It's in the soil. It's in the water. There's this whole area of North Tonawanda where they have toxic signs up on everybody's houses because they were not told that they were moving into a toxic site. It's been hidden for 40 years or however long they've been doing it. And my stepdaughter's mom lives in that neighborhood, and her daughters have had all kinds of problems. She has had cancer, I don't know how many times, birth deformities, and not being able to get pregnant, like that kind of stuff. All very, very prevalent here. So yeah, I was not surprised. And here I
What are you still doing there?
It's cheap here. I keep seeing all of these articles pop up of Buffalo is like going to be a hotspot because it's the only place people can afford to buy a house. It's just, it's very cheap here. Our family's here.
So
it is.
So my passion, if you about my actual passion is I coach. I'm a endurance coach. That's my like true passion is I love to coach people that are doing marathons and they're doing stuff way outside their comfort zone. So marathons, triathlons, Ironman triathlons, ultra marathons, like 100-mile races and stuff like that. Crazy, crazy stuff. I train people to do that. But I did what we call Ironman 70.3 distance in Niagara Falls.
Oh, cool.
It's called Barrel Man, and it's
Yeah.
it's 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike, and then a half marathon. And the half marathon is a 2-loop course in the park over by the falls. So you pass by the falls twice, and you go up, and there's some hills up there.
Yeah.
And there was a set of steps we had to go up. That was like it had to be 10 flights, but beautiful. I imagine you. Yeah, and I have a bunch of pets. So going over the Rainbow Bridge was kind of like solemn for me. Yeah. So, but that was great. But we went into Buffalo for pizza. We went to Buffalo style pizza one night and get to authentic buffalo wings so we can say we got authentic buffalo.
Right. You have to.
So, and I thought Buffalo was kind of nice. I mean, it was a city, but it was well taken care of.
Yep.
It's for at least the part that I was in.
We don't have garbage problem, not like, New York or some other bigger cities that I've been to. We don't, it's, people here are pretty friendly. We're pretty,
yes.
I really do love where we live. I don't like the winters. And so eventually I'll move to New Zealand or something.
I live in Tampa, Florida, and I live here for a reason. So yeah, we had a cold spell like the last 2 weeks and, it got down to 37. And I was cold and there's yelling at me. And I'm yelling at myself. I'm like, you are such a wimp ever since you moved to Tampa. 37 degrees. We were outside. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
You said you had a hoodie?
It's pretty like spring out today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I'm like at 37. I am freezing. I like got gloves on. I got a hat. I got all that stuff. But I remember back when 37, you're like, you just put on a hoodie and one of those like puffy vests, and you were done, and you were good.
Oh, and you're warm.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta move.
So I Florida will make you a wimp about the cold for sure.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But I will tell you that Florida, being that it's so humid down here, 50 degrees here feels a lot colder than 50 degrees back in Chicago. 50 degrees back in Chicago, I'm still okay with minor jacket walking around. 50 degrees here, different story with the humidity.
Yeah.
Two bouts of cancer, growing up, having to take care of your brothers, and then being, divorced early, single mother. Now you are doing what you love full time, and you're writing and the whole bit. So, wow, you are such an inspiration, Elizabeth. And to bring the audience back in here, listen, everybody, you got to check out. You've definitely have to check out her Instagram. It's loaded with her pictures, and she's under Elizabeth Snyder Photography LLC. That's her handle on Instagram. And then, of course, I think this is ElizabethSnyderPhotography.com. Check that out. The pictures are like crazy, everybody. So if you're looking at stuff, she does boudoir, headshots, and she does like women's photography.
Glamour. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, headshots, corporate shots, the whole bit. If you need some great photography done and you happen to be in the upstate New York area, or if you just happen to be filthy rich and you want to fly her in, hey, you know what?
I'm here for it.
Do it. She's your girl. Now, don't forget that her book is out, Unbroken, Finding Your Purpose Beyond Trauma. So that is out, and is that on Amazon?
It is.
Okay, so we will have
all the formats.
And we will have, so in the show notes, you'll get her website. You'll get a link right directly to the book. You're going to get her Instagram and all of her socials. So if you want to contact her, ask her about how she wrote the book.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm enjoying it.
So
I'm all over it. Yeah, fly me into Vegas.
Yeah, I'm telling you, everybody, if you take one look at that website or on her Instagram, you're going to want her to take your pictures. They're amazing. And what she's done, and you know what's beautiful about it, and you'll see it, is that she's not over glamorizing like models and stuff. She's got pictures of women and guys of all shapes and sizes, ethnicities, the whole bit. So check it out, and you'll be just astounded as what this woman can do with a camera. Unbelievable. But other than that, if you just happen to be watching on YouTube, I'd love for you to go ahead and hit that like, that subscribe, hit the notification bell so you always know when we drop a new episode. If you're listening on Apple or on Spotify, go ahead and give us a review. And I don't even care if it's a bad review, because I'm always looking to evolve the podcast. And your input and feedback helps me do that. And you know what? Don't forget to check out all the cool links in the show notes. So for Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And for myself, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.